Need some new Kamigawa Neon Dynasty cards? Well, you can get them from our amazing sponsor, Card Kingdom, by heading over to cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish and even get a free goldfish sticker. Just let them know you want one in your order notes and they'll hook you up. Hello, everyone. It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. And today, it's time for a super special video. I am joined once again by Crim. How's it going today, Crim?
Yo, hello everyone, and hello Seth. Well, you know, we did the standard video for Kamigawa, so now let's talk about one of my favorite formats of the last year or so, Historic.
Yes, today we're counting down our top 10 historic cards from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. And like usual, Crim and I both made a list and then we mashed them together for this video. If you want to see our individual lists, you can find them over at mtggoldfish.com. I'll link the article in the description. But anyway, I guess we should probably jump right into it and start counting down our top 10 Neo cards for historic. And at number 10 on our list, we got a pretty spicy one. Light Paws Emperor's Voice, a new legend that essentially doubles up your aura. When you play an aura, you get another aura with a different name. Crim, what might we do with this one in the historic format?
Oh, I'm pretty sure everyone and their grandma knows where this is going, right? Like, there's a Lurrus deck. It runs around. It attaches a bunch of pants to all of the sweet Sarams and core spirit dancers of the format, right? So this is just a natural shoe in there. Because first off, this is gonna, like, it won't draw a card every time, but it kind of essentially does that anyways, right? Because look at it is a 2-mana 2/2, right in line with what a Lurrus deck wants. It hits the companion requirements, and whenever an aura enters the battlefield under your control, if you cast it, you may search your library for an aura card with a mana value less than or equal to that aura with a different name than each aura you control. Put that card on the battlefield attached to Light Paws. So it doesn't like draw like Spirit Dancer, it doesn't draw like Saram, but it probably does one better because it's doing what you want it to do, which is to eventually go find either a Curious Obsession, one of your favorite cards in its standard life, Seth, because you know it's usually followed by a certain. Sorry, is it too early to bring that up? Okay, my bad.
Don't remind me.
And you also have what is the blue-white version of it that also gives it lifelink. So
Staggering Insight.
Yes, it pretty much is drawing you. It's doing more than drawing you cards. And this is exactly what you want. And like, this is when it enters the battlefield. So now, more than ever, if a Lurrus hits play, that's big. Because if a Lurrus hits play, they'll hold priority. They automatically get to play this. And then you've got to stop this now. So this card is just looking amazing every step of the way for the Auras deck.
Yeah, I mean, I think it only has one home, I think, which is the Auras deck, but in that deck, it's so good. It kind of does draw you a card by tutoring up an extra aura, plus it can find things that draw you cards. It works with Lurrus. It's just incredibly powerful in the right shell. Plus, we already have auras as like a legit option in Historic. There's blue-white builds, we've seen white-black builds, so there's a bunch of different possibilities there, and I think that Light Paws, in some ways,
is that a pun?
Yeah, unintentionally.
Possibility?
Possibility. But in some ways, it's better than drawing you a card because it's kind of ramping you too, because you're putting the aura right on the battlefield, so you're not having to spend the mana to cast it. So I don't know what exactly you cut to make room for this in those decks. I don't think you're going to cut Spirit Dancer or Sram, but alongside those cards, this seems like another great engine for the Auras decks in Historic.
I mean, it almost feels like nowadays you're luring out the removal with Saram and Core Spirit Dancers, and this is the closer. So at this point now, do you even care about like you have the 1-drop 1/1 indestructible Doggo? I love me Doggo, but at the same time, you just get rid of that now because you're at a critical mass of solid 2-drops, and that's all you want. And this card allows you to just play it. You don't have to pay to equip all that stuff, and you get to hold up Spell Pierce. You get to hold up, Karametra's Blessing. So I think you just cut the 1-drop now.
Yeah, it might not even really be necessary now, and you just go all in on these powerful 2-drops and trust that at least one of them's going to stick. Sure, they're going to die, but you have so many of these, like, if you don't kill this, I win payoffs. Now that Light Paws joins Saram and joins Core Spirit Dancer, sooner or later you're going to run them out of removal, and then you're just going to win the game in like 2 turns of casting auras. So yeah, really, really strong addition to that deck. Let's move on. Number 9 on our list, we have Crim, your exclusive preview card showing up on our top 10 list. Invoke Calamity, casted spells from the graveyard. What do you think about this one, Crim?
Okay, so I didn't pick this just because it's my spoiler card. I picked this because I think it is genuinely good. Okay,
it is good. It is good. No. I wasn't meaning you were being biased or anything.
Oh, no.
It is legitimately a good card.
But it also looks bad that I'm like vouching for this because okay, I swear everyone, this is here because it's good. Okay, so it is quad red, right? So it's quad red. So you know whatever decks this being played in is going to be very dedicated to red. Now there's already a mono red storm deck, right, running around in best of one. You may have seen it. It's doing Elemental Steamkin, Underworld Dreams, all that stuff, right? This could go in there, but on top of that, this card being able to cast an instant or sorcery for that's a total mana of 6 or less from your graveyard or hand without paying their cost, which by the way, this is an instant speed spell. People are like, okay, why does that matter? But like legitimately being able to get around the casting restrictions of a sorcery and doing it on your opponent's turn, this is major. I think that is going to be a big thing going for it. What 6 or less spell is being casted is almost irrelevant right now because the point here is that you can do that. This card is there and it's going to be a huge tool in a lot of things. It's just going to get better as more spells get printed into the format. And as you know, Historic is essentially the legacy format of Arena. This is just going to keep getting more tools to get added to the toolbox. So.
Yeah, I think the card is very, very powerful. I think outside of Standard, the most powerful of the cycle for sure. Being quad red, that might limit the places you can fit it, but once you get back to Historic and older formats, we do have a lot more mana fixing, which does make these mana costs a little bit less of a problem compared to Standard, where in Standard, outside of mono red, how do you cast this in a world where you're just playing a bunch of pathways or whatever? Going to be really, really tough. But in Historic, you got Shocklands, you got Triumphs, tons of dual lands to make this work, and we've seen similar effects where you're casting spells from the graveyard be really, really strong. We see Torrential Gearhulk being very good. We see Dreadhorde Arcanist being very good. Plus, as you mentioned, being able to cast sorceries at instant speed, very strong. That's part of what makes Teferi such a powerful effect in older formats, being able to instant speed a Wrath. You know that feeling when your opponent, they plus their Teferi and pass with all their mana up and you got a bunch of creatures and you're like, oh my god, I know what's coming, please, don't do that to me. This is going to be able to do something like that in Historic. Plus, 2 Stone Rains. That's what I want to do with this card, is just try to make Ponza work.
Screams Stone Rain.
Yeah, so I like this card a lot, and I think it definitely has a chance to be very strong in Historic. And who knows if we ever get some of the no mana value cards in a Historic anthology, like Crashing Footfalls and those kind of cards.
That would be disgusting.
Oh, then this becomes even more bonkers. So
can you imagine just casting any of those spells and then I don't know, some other I can cast a board wipe plus whatever,
Ancestral Visions or whatever.
AV. Hell yeah, let's go.
Oh, so good. Well, let's keep moving on. Number 8 on our list, we got a card that might not look like much, but I actually think this card is going to have a big impact on the Historic format, and that is Moon Snare Prototype. Moon Snare Prototype, it's essentially Springleaf Drum with a bunch of twists on it. It costs blue mana. You can channel it to bounce something, but it's essentially Springleaf Drum. Springleaf Drum is a card that is a staple in Affinity style artifact decks all the way back to Modern. That is this fast. It's a free artifact, so it's upping your artifact account, which is exactly what you want in an Affinity style deck. The thing is, Springleaf Drum not legal in Historic, so this is Historic's version of Springleaf Drum. And just with the last couple of sets, I actually double checked this to make sure. It actually doesn't, according to Scryfall, it doesn't exist in Historic. Am I wrong?
I swear, I felt like I've seen it in Historic, but maybe I'm just wrong.
Yeah, I double checked. We can triple check to make sure that I'm not.
As we were saying this right now, I'm actually opening Arena to type in Springleaf Drum.
Type it in and confirm.
Okay.
It definitely says on Scryfall not legal in Historic. I mean, if it is legal, then we can cross this off the list and you can laugh at me. but so So Moonstare Prototype, it's essentially Springleaf Drum, but one that's legal in Historic, and we don't have actual Springleaf Drum in Historic. Hopefully, Crim's double checking on Arena right now just to make sure. But I think that this will serve a similar purpose. We've seen in the last few sets artifact decks being on the rise. We've had Oswald decks, there's Tempered Steel decks, we got a bunch of affinity stuff show up in Jumpstart Historic Horizons, getting like Thought Monitors and so forth. So there's the pieces there to build an affinity deck. This is just an absolute staple in decks like this. You play it in those decks every time, and it's going to greatly power up those decks by being a free artifact on the battlefield, similar to what we see Springleaf Drum doing in older formats. Crim, did you check? Does it exist? Am I wrong?
It does not exist. So I think I'm just in Crim's land. I think I maybe played a little bit too much Modern. Who knows? The lines get blurred. All right. I don't know what year it is. Okay. So the thing here is, you're right. Okay, with Springleaf Drum not in Historic, this is good. This is very good. The one thing that I do worry about, though, is the one beauty in Affinity, right? Because there technically is the blue-white Affinity deck in Historic right now, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact that oftentimes I see those decks need, like, they struggle a little bit to immediately play something that is, like, color costed, right? Yeah. So like they're like, okay, well, we're playing like, a bunch of like colorless lands, and like we hope to maybe cast an Esper Sentinel, right? Or like eventually get there on the 7-drop from Modern Horizons 2, but that's like down the line. So they have more time to draw the blue source. I do wonder, like if the blue is an actual drawback for an Affinity deck, does that play style of Affinity on Historic need that? Right? Like that's another thing, because like, we all these, like all the modern versions, right? The modern Affinity decks have all these things to like kind of like play off, like, these free artifacts. But I don't know if the deck in Historic needs it, but it seems really good. So you know what? This totally makes sense why it's on the list.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that is a fair point. I think the colored thing is an issue. That does make it worse than Springleaf Drum. So that is a bit of a downside. And it is true that we don't have as much affinity stuff, like true affinity for artifact stuff in Historic as we do in like Modern, but we did get like Thought Monitor, which is something that just wants as many artifacts as possible. Nettle Cyst is another one that really just cares about brute force many artifacts. And I think the most popular build is blue-white. So it's not like we're trying to splash this in a deck that doesn't already have blue mana. So I think that it definitely has a home, but I think it is true that maybe not quite as busted as like Springleaf Drum is in Modern Affinity, but still, I mean, it's something that didn't exist before. Plus, you get this random channel upside where late in the game, you'd run off the top of your deck when maybe you don't need another artifact. I don't know, bouncing something's not bad. Getting that like Ether Gust style top or bottom of the library removal spell, I mean, that's reasonable. Get a blocker out of the way or something. I've never seen
an Affinity deck tap 5 mana though, but yeah.
That is true. Five is a lot for that deck, but definitely worth keeping in mind at a minimum for your Historic artifact decks. Let's keep moving on. Number 7 on our list. We got another blue card, Discover the Impossible. This card seems like a Crim special, something you'd play in a control deck, but what are you thinking about this one, Crim?
I mean, is this not good in just like numerous, like kind of like playstyle? Like anything that uses instants and sorceries, this seems amazing in a Phoenix deck. This seems amazing. Like this is a 3-mana instant spell. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Exile one of them face down and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost if it's an instant spell with mana value 2 or less. If you don't put that card into your hand. That's really good, right? That just seems really, really good. Now, obviously, Historic isn't, it's not like we're packed with like brainstorms or anything anymore, but we're still like able to play a decent amount of instants. And at the very least, if you don't want to play it as an instant, maybe you just want to go find a spell, you do it on your turn, you can still go look for that Faithless Looting or whatever it is you want to do, right? The Phoenix deck can definitely use this. This just seems powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has a shot from like spell slingery, Phoenix, DRC style decks to control style decks where you're able to dig for an answer. And it's got a lot of upside. Like, even if you discount the free casting of an instant, this still isn't a bad card. Like 5 mana instant dig 5 deep for a card. Not super efficient, but the extra upside of being able to use this in desperation mode where you're about to die and you only have 3 mana and you cast this and hit the lightning helix to like stabilize or stay alive or hit a counter spell to counter something.
Yep.
Like that's a really, really big upside. Plus it's 2 spells for 1 potentially in a Phoenix deck or some sort of prowess deck. But what were you saying, Crim?
Yeah. Yeah. It's 2 for 1 in there. And then on top of that, it exiles one of those cards face down, right? So it's not drawing the card. It's not drawing the card, so it gets around Narset, which is very popular in Historic, right? And then like you put the rest in the bottom, and then you may cast the exiled card, and if you don't, then put it into your hand. So I think that's pretty big. The wording on that makes it a lot nicer just to get around Narset.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Getting around Narset is a big deal. And if there's one thing we've seen in Historic, lots of blue decks that are wanting to sling spells, that's kind of been a hallmark of the format for the last year or so. So this has tons of potential homes in the format. Let's keep moving on. Next up on our list, one of my favorites from Standard, Soul Ripper is back. And this card, it's just so efficient at what it does. So a big vehicle, 2 mana, 4/3. When it attacks, you can sack an artifact or creature to grow it and give it menace. I feel like this card has multiple potential homes in the format. First, we got decks that are all about sacrificing things, like the Cat Oven style decks, where this can just be a really big threat.
They need more things to do. Like, what I mean is like literally more actions to take. Because now on Arena, when you sack a cat or anything like that, you now have like the option to, well, do you want to crew? Like, do you want to sack a cat? Now there's going to just be constant click. You're going to just be like your API. You're going to need like an actual gaming mouse, by the way, because you're going to have to APM through your board state.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. You're gonna have so many clicks, but the sacrifice deck seems good. It's cheap enough to work with Loris, which is a huge deal in formats outside of Standard. And then we have plenty of places where this could show up in just like black aggro style decks, where you got recursive 1-drops where you can sacrifice them sort of for free. So I think this card has a shot to show up in multiple.
Copter.
Right.
That was played in mono black in Pioneer. Right. And then when Historic came out, people tried to port that over, but without Smuggler's Copter. Well, now you have something that's kind of like it. Yeah. And Blood-Soaked Champion doesn't mind getting sent into the sun for this. So don't worry about it. Like, like much like Seth said, mono black's great. And Cat Oven, surprise.
Yeah, so this card, multiple potential homes, just a really, really strong vehicle. But let's keep moving on. Next on our list, Crim, I know, we got one of your favorites, Nashi Moonsage's Scion, the Mythic Ninja. What do you think about this one in Historic?
All right, so in Standard, it's like, to me, like it's mid-pack, right? Like a okay ninja, sure, whatever. But in Historic, you've got Ingenious Infiltrator. You've got all the sweet ninjas from the Historic Horizon stuff. On top of that, the cost of life in Standard spells is very real because like people play clunky 5+ spells, right? In Historic, you can actually get a good chunk of cards for dirt cheap here. So if I'm able to connect and just simply like, and that's not to say that I still can't do something like, Archmage's Charm, I'll just cast that and draw 2, or even better, I'll just your Magma Opus, I'll just hit you in the face with it, right? Like, sure, why not? And then, or like anything else along the lines. Like there's a lot of, that's like the pricier side of Historic, but then you have all the cheap interaction, like the Lightning Helixes, the Fatal Pushes, the things like that. So with that in mind, like this card just feels even better the older we go back in the format because the higher the power level and the cheaper they are. So the less you're paying for life. Yeah. And again, the ninja package just gets better. It's significantly better in Historic than it is in Standard.
And in Historic, I definitely agree with all that stuff. And in Historic, I've gotten snowballed enough by stuff like Dreadhorde Arcanist to know that it's very possible to snowball a creature like this. You have so much good interaction, thought seizes, inquisitions, fatal pushes, that it's actually pretty practical to tear apart your opponent's hand of answers, play something like this or Dreadhorde Arcanist, kill the stuff that could block it, and just try to ride that to a victory. So I think I'm actually way higher on Nashi in Historic than I am in Standard personally. I think the card can be very, very strong. And then you do have the big, like, accidentally hit a Nugan or something and just win the game moments as well that are possible in the format. So
the whatever the Paradox Engine decks now actually probably should run more removal. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, you might actually have to run removal on your decks now because, oh boy, if this card just keeps hitting you, you're gonna lose. Like that, it's as simple as that. Like if you don't stop it, you're gonna lose to it. So
like, because those decks play Karn the Great Creator. If they find your Karn the Great Creator or something like that, oh man.
Yeah, game. Well, let's keep moving on. Number 4 on our list. We got some modified action with Kodama of the Westry, and Kodama of the Westry was on our standard list. Also in our historic list. In some ways, it might be better in historic because in historic, you got stuff like Winding Constrictor and Conclave Mentor to really embrace the +1/+1 counter theme. Crim, what do you think about our new Spirit?
That is precisely what I was going to try to lead towards because you have the snake. You have lots of things that can like manipulate how many more counters you can get. You even have like the Ozolith if you really wanted to, right? So like everything is in historic, and Kodama just gets better the farther back because, again, it's just 3 mana for an extremely powerful ability. And now that also helps it. Like before, you would have to deal with you would have these creatures that are super massive, like the Auras deck, and like maybe you don't have your unblockable enchantment. Maybe you don't have your aura that makes you fly. And you just get chump blocked, and unfortunately, you know, that was that. But now when your stuff is modified, the damage is going to happen. Your big clunky threats are very scary.
Yeah, I mean, this card is really, really frightening in the format. It's cheap enough to work with Collected Company. You got all these extra support cards like Winding Constrictor. You got like the Heliod, Life Gain counter decks. And one of the things that I think is really, really neat about this card, especially in a format like Historic, is I've definitely played with the snake decks. I've played some of the Heliod decks. Those decks are really, really good at making huge creatures. That's kind of what the whole gimmick is. Like, I make these huge things. The problem is sometimes those huge creatures just get chump blocked a lot. You make like a 10/10 and it just gets chumped forever until your opponent, you know, finds a Wrath and ruins everything. This trample ability on Kodama the Westry is really, really huge in decks like that. The ramp is always going to be helpful, but then just the fact that you're making your massive Winding Constrictor, making your huge Trellisar or something into a trampler, that's going to close out games really, really fast. So I think Kodama the Westry, oh my goodness, this card's going to do some sweet things in Historic.
I mean, it may seem like a win more, but, you know, occasionally it is a Coco target, and you could splash just throw a sprinkle a copy of this in there, and, you know, you're Johnny's Pride Mates. Turns out you don't need the infinite combo. What if you just hit him?
Yeah. I've never known why people say win more as a negative. Like, I want to win more. That's the whole fun. Like, please let me win more. But anyway, let's keep moving on. We have at number 3 on our list. This card again, Biting Palm Ninja. Crim, you're just talking about how ninjas are actually kind of a thing in Historic. There's a lot more support than in Standard, even with stuff like Ingenious Infiltrator. I'm assuming Biting Palm Ninja gonna have a chance in the ninja deck in Historic?
Oh God, yes. It is even better in Historic, and the Exile now is really relevant, right? Like there's a lot of graveyard shenanigans in Historic. So now you get to pick off anything like even Unburial Rites, anything along those lines. And yeah, it just gets better the farther back we go because again, Ingenious Infiltrator makes a lot of things work because it's only 2 mana to ninjutsu that. So that you attack with this, it loses its counter, you attack next turn, you can ninjutsu this back to your hand. And then ninjutsu in the Infiltrator, draw a card. And now your opponent has to, like, pretty much anything goes through unblocked, they're in trouble. So this card just does everything I want it to do. And of course, as you had mentioned, there's about a mono black deck. Well, the mono black deck can play this. It doesn't have to be a ninja deck. Obviously, this is just good enough on its own as a solid creature. So in any deck that can afford to play a creature. So this is good in mono black. Ninjas, a tempo style deck. You just need disruption. All of it's there.
Yeah, I mean, this does everything that you want a card to do in Historic. Thoughtseize already one of the best cards in the format. You got better ninjas, and I think it's really cute that it works with like Gilded Goose. Like you just need to unblock creatures, so you can actually in your sacrifice deck or whatever. Like Gilded Goose sees a lot of play in the format because there's not that many Birds of Paradise style mana dorks. So you can attack with your 0-powered Gilded Goose, ninjutsu this into play, and then replay your Gilded Goose to get another food. So I think that this has potential to show up in a lot of different decks. Basically anything that has black in it and has some cheap evasive creatures, this is going to be in consideration. The only downside is it is 3 mana, which means it's not going to work in Lurrus decks, but we still have enough non-Lurrus decks that I think that this is going to have a big impact on the format.
You see rogues without Lurrus now, so just saying, rogues and ninjas are now starting to get pretty close. I wonder if in a few years, WotC's just going to errata it so that rogues and ninjas can benefit off each other, right? Because you pretty much have Silver for Master, which feels like rogues and ninjas are almost like, come on, they're parallel to each other, right?
They are pretty similar. If they ever did do that, then these cards would be even better. But I mean, you could play this in a rogues deck. That's the kind of strategy where this would be really good. There's no reason you couldn't make a hybrid rogue ninja deck right now and have it be very strong. So definitely expect to see a lot of biting palm ninjas in Historic. But let's keep moving on to number 2 on our list. We have our white Scavenging Ooze, our equipment Scavenging Ooze, Lion Sash. Oh, this card's so good. So it's basically a white Scavenging Ooze, but it's an equipment, which is somewhat relevant in Historic. It's not like we got Stoneforge Mystic, but there's occasionally equipment themed decks that show up. The big deal is this is just really good against graveyard stuff. And in Historic, there's a lot of graveyard stuff between cat ovens and flashback spells and reanimation shenanigans. A lot of decks are using their graveyard, and this is just an amazing answer for stuff like that. That's also going to get really big throughout the game. But Crim, what are you thinking about this one in Historic?
Exactly what you've just said there. It does everything you want it to do. Scavenging Ooze does gain you the life, so that is a little bit different, but regardless, this is just like another color now has access to some form of a Scavenging Ooze, and I think that's very big. So now you don't have to force the green, right? So like you could start looking towards maybe like Esper mid-range, right? Who knows? Because when you play this on its own, it can also just be a 1/1, right? And then it grows itself that way too. So, and all these die all the same to Fatal Push. So if they have Fatal Push, they got you anyways. So, this just seems all around a very good card and much needed.
Yeah, I mean, this card, cheap enough to work with Lurrus, cheap enough to work with Collected Company. Worst case, a great sideboard card to bring in to snipe things that Dreadhorde Arcanist are flashing back, to snipe Croxus, to snipe Lurrus targets, to snipe Arclight Phoenixes, to snack Cauldron Familiars, to snack Torrential Gearhulk targets, like flashback cards. There's so many graveyard things going on in this format that I'm really hyped for this card and think that it's going to see a lot of play in a lot of basically any white-based creature deck. I don't know how it works with Scavenging Ooze. Like, if I had access to both of them, which one would I choose? Maybe the Ooze, but if I don't have green mana in my deck, I think this is a very worthy replacement that even has some upsides where you can like grow this and then stick it on some flying creature and smash your opponent to death in just a couple of attacks, which is a meaningful upside compared to Scavenging Ooze.
Modify enabler, by the way.
Ooh, also, definitely with the +1/+1 counters and reconfiguring. So double modified synergies there. But anyway, let's move on. Number 1 on our list. You might have guessed it. Channel Lands.
Surprise.
The Channel Lands, second format in a row, come out on top. And again, I don't know what to say about these cards except they're busted. Crimda, what do you think?
Well, yeah, they're obviously very strong, but I think the cool thing to notice here is that the power is shifted. It's definitely shifted in this format because the black one significantly gets better than what it is in Standard. In Standard, black is the weakest one, but now here where you've got Rakdos decks, that are constantly trying to fill their own yard and are more than willing to do that, right? Now you just have an additional way to do so. right? You have Stitcher Supplier, but you also have this. And then on top of that, you get to return a creature to your hand. So that's pretty big, right? And this is all attached to a channel ability, so you can do it whenever. Even if for 4 mana, it doesn't matter because this comes at the cost of an untapped land. So this is just an amazing ability to have in Historic. So now that we by now you probably know what each one does. And with that, I actually move the black one up to, if not the best, the second best one in Historic.
I am also very high on the black one in Historic. One of the things about Historic is it's a Lurrus format. And the one way you can defeat Lurrus is by getting it off the battlefield. The one upside is there's only one of them because of how companion requirements work. So if you kill the Lurrus, then you feel a little bit better. Okay, I dealt with this really devastating threat. Something like the Black Channel land is insane. It's such a great way to get your Lurrus back from the graveyard. And we've seen decks doing this with other cards already, but this is attached to a land. And we're just talking about with Lion Sash, how many graveyard synergies there are in the format. This is a natural fit, milling cards to like support your Croxas or whatever. So I feel like, I mean, they're all really, really good, but the black one I think is the one whose value changes the most from standard to Historic for me, where in standard it's kind of like middle bottom, and then in Historic it's like top tier, maybe the best, or at least like second best in the format. But really all these lands are going to see a lot of play. The white one for removal, the red one to make tokens, pretty sneaky with some of the like Indomitable creativity stuff going on. Another way you can, make tokens without having creatures in your deck. So they all have a lot of potential in different archetypes, and I expect them all to see really heavy play in Historic.
Fully agree.
Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of our top 10 Historic cards from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Crim, thanks for hanging out and doing it. It's always a blast.
Thank you for having me.
And we will be back tomorrow to talk about the top 10 Neo cards for Modern. So make sure to come back tomorrow to check that out. In the meantime, if you want to see our individual list, you can find them over at mtggoldfish.com, also linked in the description. And now that you've seen our list, let us know what you're hyped for in Historic. What's your top cards from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty for the format? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will talk to you soon. Looking for even more Kamigawa Neon Dynasty coverage? Well, you can find some other awesome videos right here and here.